Welcome to One Good Thing Media, your official podcast review channel. We search the vast digital landscape on a daily basis to discover the best shows that podcasters have to offer. Are you ready to discover new favorites to add to your playbook? Stay tuned and listen to host Jeryl Spear's latest podcast reviews.
Hello everybody, this is Jeryl Spear, and as most of you know, I am the host and creator of One Good Thing Media. Welcome everybody to our show this week. I am sitting here grinning from ear to ear because I am going to be talking about one of my most favorite topics, and that is stories from the other side. That's going to be the main part of our show, but of course we have other things that I want to share with you before we do. So if you're interested in what goes on, quote, the other side, stay with me. I've got two great podcast reviews, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some experiences that I have personally had in that realm. Before we get going, I want to share a word from our sponsor, irreverently called Who Gives a Crap? One of our favorite products, and one, pardon the information here, that we use every day. And that is recycled, repurposed toilet paper, but saves thousands of maple trees, fir trees, and other botanicals that we love from being unnecessarily harvested. If you would like to learn more about Who Gives a Crap and save some bucks while you're at it, check out the link that I have included in our show notes. I would like to welcome Who Gives a Crap to our family of sponsors. Who Gives a Crap really does give a crap. It's a sustainable company that is literally making the world a better place to live, one bum and one toilet paper roll at a time. The company's toilet paper is plastic-free and made with sustainable materials. It lacks a lot of the chemicals that are used to treat traditional toilet paper, and its super long, soft, and strong rolls feel good on more than your conscience. Who Gives a Crap donates 50% of its profits to improve the lives of people in underdeveloped countries who do not have basic sanitation, including toilets. I also want to add that our family has been a loyal customer of Who Gives a Crap for several years. Scroll down and click on the link that I've included in our show notes. You'll save some bucks on your first purchase, diminish your contribution of waste to the planet, and help those who are unable to help themselves at the same time. And now let's get on to some news. I have two bits of news for you today, and the first one actually is more of a reminder because I did announce it last week. But for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, One Good Thing Media is now on YouTube. It is an audio-only program for now. We will be getting into video in 2025, but Amazon Music has a whole section for podcasts. And if you go to One Good Thing Media, you'll find us there. We have several podcasts already uploaded, and we're uploading more as I speak. My second bit of news absolutely sends me right over the moon. In 2023, there was a podcast called The Girlfriends. Now, there are several podcasts called The Girlfriends, so if you want to check this out, you need to make sure that you get the one that is with iHeart and Novel Audio. And The Girlfriends is all about middle-aged women that, when they were younger, they all dated the same man. They knew each other because they worked in the same hospitals and so forth. And come to find out that while he looked great on paper, Bob was a physician and a surgeon after all. And what a great man to bring home to your family. Meet my future husband, the doctor. Bob had just relocated from New York to Las Vegas and really wanted to leave his past behind. They first of all thought, well, let's have a Bob's Club. And they all got together and they were swapping stories. And then one of the girls mentions, hey, did you know that Bob has a skeleton in his closet? Come to find out, one of the gals that he not only dated but also married disappeared. So at first it was lighthearted. They joked about getting Bob and where was his wife, and it was just all a giggle. Through circumstances, they soon realize that this woman is missing, and she is probably going to stay missing because she's most likely deceased. So they decide to become amateur detectives. They go to New York, they do things undercover. I mean, it's just crazy, and it's retold in chronological order so you feel like you're there with them when they do it. I won't give it away. It's season 1 of The Girlfriends, and if you haven't had the pleasure of listening to it, you really should. But the reason why I have it on my news bit today is because, much to my surprise, they have a season 2. In the process of trying to find Gail, the police discovered a body, and for years it was identified as being Gail Katz. When Bob was on trial for murder, they exhumed the body, did a DNA test, and it wasn't Gail. So season 2, in the name of sisterhood and adventure, they decided to find out who the body belonged to. They had come to think of this unknown woman as their sister, who was laid to rest in Gail Katz's grave for 10 years. Here is a short clip from season 2 of The Girlfriends.
As I'm sure you've picked up, we're not professional detectives. We're just 3 nosy Jewish ladies and 1 tofu-eating producer. But we really, really care. I'm determined that by the end of the series, not only will we know this missing girlfriend's name, but we will know her story. So back to that question, where do we start? Well, how about at the beginning? I'm Carol Fisher, and from the teams at Novel and iHeart Podcasts, this is The Girlfriends, Our Lost Sister, Episode 1, The Double Mitzvah.
I can hardly wait to get back with the girls, even if it's only vicariously. Jeryl! Huh? That sounds like me. What are you listening to? Oh yeah, I have a new segment just for you. And of course you can tell by now, since my AI already gave it away. It's called, What Are You Listening To? I have to confess, What Are You Listening To has become my favorite portion of our One Good Thing Media podcast. It gives me an opportunity to really just sort of gush over something that I'm listening to. And as you may know by now, I am also a voracious book reader. And when I can blend the best of both of those worlds, I am over the moon. So, what am I listening to this week? The Block Party, a serial adaptation of the book by Jamie Day. This is being aired on Case Closed. And Case Closed is normally a true crime investigative podcast. They devote 1 season per case, and they really delve deep into who it was, what happened, and in many cases are present for the conclusion of the case, whether they have apprehended somebody, convicted somebody, etc. But twice now, once in season 5 and once in season 7, which is their most current season, they have set aside their normal format to play an entire book, which I know in Jar of Hearts it was 14 episodes. I'm not sure how long the newest book will be, which is called The Block Party. It's a book about neighbors who aren't really as they appear, or at least on the surface. They all have secrets. And it's a whodunit in the classic sense of the word that leaves you wondering nearly to the very end. And believe me, I'm on episode 12 and I'm feeling the angst right now, trying to figure out who's hooking up with who's the neighborhood stalker, who's the blackmailer, and who unalived one of their neighbors. In my active imagination, I imagine tying a string around each one of these characters and sort of mapping out their wanderings around the neighborhood. And I imagine that by the time the book is ended, they have woven this intricate web of activities, deceits, and mystery. But reading the reviews, which I always do before I buy a book, they were using descriptors like juicy, nail-biting, breathtaking. And it was really deceiving, and I could see some of the lower stars people had also checked out their reviews and then walked away disappointed. First of all, to the reviewers who described this particular book as nail-biting, jarring, etc., get a grip, find another book, and go read it in your safe room, wherever that is. From my perspective, The Block Party definitely delivers an enjoyable, light reading that's perfect for a day lounging by the poolside, hanging out at the beach, and you're sitting under your umbrella. It's deftly written, it's engaging, you never get bored, not even for a sentence. And it's written in a consistent style that's similar to the late author and matron of matinee murder stories, Mary Higgins Clark. Pretty mild. I just finished episode 12 with more episodes to go. Jar of Hearts went 14 episodes. I'm not sure if this will make it to 14 or perhaps even go to 15. I don't know, but it's starting to wrap up. I do have a couple pieces of advice when you listen to The Block Party. Number 1, there are a lot of characters in this book. I've counted 14 just off the top of my head. You get several chapters down the line and all of a sudden this character reappears and you're thinking, wait a minute, who is that person married to? What does that person do? Write down all the characters, who they're married to, and what they do for a living. It just helps because you can reference that cheat sheet and go, aha, I knew he wasn't such a nice guy. My second tip is to listen to The Block Party as soon as you can. The Block Party, just like Jar of Hearts, is only available for a limited time. And now for what I know all of you have been waiting for, and that is we are going to do 2 podcast reviews on the supernatural. Now, I have to tell you that I'm slightly psychic. I've been this way since I was a little kid. I used to be able to have premonitions about what was going to happen. I could call somebody and tell just by the sound of their ring if they were home or not. And my mother said to me one day, well, how do you know that? You know, she was very skeptic. And I said, well, you can hear the difference in the ring. Can't you hear it? No, of course she couldn't hear it. And so things have happened to me on and off all my life. I am definitely not a Nancy Weber by any stretch of the imagination, but I am psychic. And one of the things that I am particularly sensitive to is, number 1, my dear departed husband, who died, 16 years ago. It doesn't even seem like it. And he has insisted on coming back and visiting me regularly since then. It all started, I was laying in bed. Robert had been gone just a couple weeks. Everything was just empty. I was numb. And I had a treadmill in my bedroom. And I'm sound asleep. It's 3 or 3:30 in the morning, about the same time as he passed away. And all of a sudden, just like that, the treadmill started running so fast that I thought it was going to come apart. And I woke up in this dark bedroom. I'm looking around. I'm by myself. I'm not used to being by myself at that point. And this treadmill is going nuts. So I finally got it shut down. I was very unsettled, and I thought, well, maybe there's a short, something's going on with the treadmill. But every night, at about that same time, the treadmill would go off. And it was so unsettling to me because it wasn't like friendly, oh, hi, Robert, how are you doing? It was like, that I actually, I took the treadmill to the dump. I couldn't take it. It was just too creepy. But he's visited me many times since then. Sometimes he offers advice. Sometimes I'm asleep. Sometimes I'm awake. But he comes to visit me. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, I was in the kitchen cooking and I looked out into the dining area and he was staring at me. And this time, not only was he fully opaque, but also in color. And one other thing, every time I see him, he's just a little bit younger. And now that he's been gone so long, he was a teenager in front of me. And he was older than me, and, by quite a bit, and he was definitely a senior citizen. So for him to be a teenager and grinning at me, like, haha, I'm seeing you, hi, what are you guys up to? What are you cooking? It was like, okay, Robert, I accept it. I accept you. And I have for a long time. But I'm also particularly sensitive to animals. And when animals depart this world, cross the Rainbow Bridge, it's very usual for them to frequently communicate with me. It all started when my son was a baby, and I had a very old dog. This dog was named Ace, and he had been with me when I was young. He was now with me as a mother. We had gone through so much together, but he had gotten so old. Within a couple weeks of him actually leaving this earth, I was laying in bed one night, and I felt him jump up on the bed. And he went over to the opposite side of the bed at the foot, and he turned around 3 times like he always did, and he laid down. And I thought, oh, you're dreaming, because I was half awake, half asleep. I thought, Jeryl, you're dreaming. 3 days later, I was laying in bed, not asleep yet. I was reading a book, and the same thing happened. So I knew it was Ace. It was either Ace or a memory of Ace. Sometimes a ghost part of their memory gets trapped in this world. And so I just decided not to mention it to anybody. I was still a little bit confused, like, what does this mean? And I had a friend come over, and he was going to babysit my son for the night, and I was going to be traveling to a different area for work. And so the next day, I flew home, and he looked at me and he said, what the hell's going on around here? I said, what do you mean, what the hell's going on around here? And he said, I was laying here, and something jumped up on the bed, went to the other end of the bed, turned around 3 times and laid down. What the hell is going on? And I said, that was Ace. He just came to say goodbye to you. And we never saw him again. He never appeared again. Not that he isn't always in my thoughts, because he certainly is. Now you fast forward quite a long time. My son is grown up, and I inherited 2 cats that were quite elderly. They were in my care. I just enjoyed them. Oh, I spoiled them. I just turned into their woman servant. I gave them everything they wanted and attentive. And, the cats became quite vocal about their needs because they knew that I just listened to everything and fussed over them. They were 21 and 22. They passed of natural causes. I was just so distraught. They were so sweet. And so one cat, not both of them, but the one cat, a male cat, his name was Patrick. And Patrick started visiting me from beyond real quick after he passed. Patrick would jump up on my bed at night, and he would lay on me so I couldn't move, because he was laying on me. And then he would eventually get the covers to fall off the bed, and he was just a little rascal. And then he started doing figure 8s around my legs while I was sitting at my desk. And I started hearing him call me. It was almost like he was in a different room, and he was just wanting my attention. I'm assuming he probably missed me waiting on his every whim. And he calls, and he still does it to this day. And he's been gone, 5 years. And it feels like I still have at least 1 cat in the house. I have a lot of other stories. It's true because it happened to me without any bidding or effort on my part. So if you've lost a loved one, whether it's 4-legged or 2, I firmly believe that they do come and visit you. They are concerned about you, and they will welcome you with open arms or open paws when you cross the bridge to meet them. I had carefully picked out my podcast that I wanted to feature today, and the first one was Ghost Story, and it was is by Wandery and Pineapple Street Studios. But when I went up to check on it, Wandery had taken it off of their public postings and moved it to their Wandery Plus app, which means that you need to subscribe to Wandery Plus in order to listen to it. I will tell you there are perks for that, including ad-free listening experiences. So if you have several that you've been thinking about listening to on Wandery Plus, please sign up for it if it's in your budget and listen to Ghost Story. Here's a clip from it. I think you're going to like it.
I want to tell you a story. Well, it's really 3 stories, all wrapped around each other. It's a ghost story, it's a murder mystery, and it's a family drama. By which I mean it's about my wife's family, her family's history, and there's a chance they'll disown me for doing this.
If you come out with a piece that says he was a murderer, then I will be sorry that we ever said we would contribute to it.
But before we get into any of that, let's start at the beginning, with the thing that set all of this in motion. When I was 16 back in the 90s, my family moved to an old Victorian house in London on a street called Queen's Road. I slept in a bedroom tucked into the creaky top floor, and weird things would happen up there. I'd wake up and objects would have moved across the room, specifically this one vase. When I go to bed, it'd be on the mantelpiece, and then in the morning, I'd find it on the desk. I'd put it back, and the next morning I'd find it somewhere else. Lights would flash on and off on their own, and I'd get this uncomfortable cold feeling whenever I was alone in the house. It freaked me out at the time, but the truth is, I didn't really think much of it. I was a teenager. I had other things on my mind. Every now and then, I'd ask my sister if she was messing with me, but she always swore she wasn't. I grew up, left home, and became a journalist for Al Jazeera. I cover things like French labor strikes and the war in Ukraine. I don't believe in ghosts. So when my family moved out of the house on Queen's Road, I completely forgot about the weird stuff that happened in there. Until that is, a few years ago, a man reached out, an old neighbor of ours, with a story about that very room.
I mean, it's quite a story.
His name is Charles Benellis, and he knows everything about this neighborhood. You could say he's a bit of a gossip, but you probably shouldn't.
Slanderous. Gives completely the wrong impression.
Anyway, this is what he told me. Charles was walking around my old neighborhood one day, going door to door, collecting donations for the local museum.
I was there rattling a tin.
And definitely not gossiping.
Well, I mean, it was just so-and-so's still there and so-and-so's moved out and they've had a divorce and all that sort of business.
Eventually, he gets to my old house and knocks on the door. A woman answers. She's the mother of the house. After chatting for a bit, she invites him inside and she tells him a story unlike anything he's ever heard before.
The story goes the American swans up with a hello and...
Here's what she tells him. One day, the woman is at home at my old house. She looks out of the window and she sees a man standing on the driveway.
So the mother of the house opens the door.
It's someone who used to live in the house, an American man who'd lived there with his wife and 2 children. The American says to her, "I'm so sorry to bother you, but I just have to know.
Do you still have that ghost in the top bedroom? Straight, like that."
What the American man proceeds to tell her, the things his family experienced on the top floor, it makes her go completely white. Because this isn't the first time she's heard of something going on up there. She just never believed it before.
This struck a chord since the daughter had always insisted that there was a ghost in her bedroom, which would manifest itself on occasions and sit on her bed.
The woman's daughter, starting when she was around 10, began complaining about a ghost visiting her room at night. Specifically, the ghost of a faceless woman.
She said to me, "Oh yes, my daughter told me about some goings on. Some sort of faceless woman who comes and sits on my bed." And she said, "I always batted them away on the basis that we don't believe in that sort of thing. So I rang your father, and he said that was Tristram's room. So I imagine he phoned you and the cat was out of the bag."
I promise you, and I hope you believe me, that I don't normally find myself having conversations like this, or even entertaining these sorts of ideas. But it's kind of weird, right?
You now have 3 completely unconnected families who have had some sort of strange, inexplicable experience on the top floor of that house. I think it's wonderful.
Wonderful indeed. And as a matter of fact, that's just the tip of the iceberg about what went on in that house and another one that was nearby. It moves on when the husband actually began investigating a very bizarre murder nearby that happened to his wife's grandmother. And of course, for every event that happened, there is a ghost attached that he has to suss out. Obviously, it is very entertaining, and I love his lighthearted but yet curious approach that he brings to all aspects of this case. And once again, it's Ghost Story, and it is now behind the paywall of Wondery Plus. My last review today is a podcast called Coffin Talkin'. And it is so offbeat, so different. I don't want to know what goes on in a mortuary, but I was wrong. It has to do with 2 people primarily. There's Holly, who is the host of the show, and Frank, who tells the stories. Frank has been a funeral director and mortician for many, many years. And he is not really a fanciful man that would become enamored and thinking, did you see that? I thought that was something over there. It's not like that. But Frank sees spirits and he sees ghosts. And he sort of takes it all in stride. I don't think he has yet realized that he's probably the only one in that facility that can see what he's seeing. But it makes sense. Mortuaries, probably all of them to some degree or another, are haunted. Coffin Talkin' is a new podcast, relatively new. It debuted in November 2023. And I don't even know why I checked it out. Just curious of the name, I guess. And I have been absolutely wrapped up in it ever since. Now, Frank has decorum. He talks about taking patients into his care. He's very respectful. And he's the type of guy that if he sees somebody that needs help, whether it is somebody who comes into his facility asking for him to take care of their loved ones, or something he sees on the street that he knows somebody needs help, he is just a very good man with crazy stories. Now, most of his stories do deal with the supernatural, things that he's experienced, and they are amazing. Even if you don't want to listen to the first part of the podcast, head right on over to Frank and listen to his story of the week. They drop on Mondays. But he also has some things about different types of services that he's done where the families have really touched him, and how much empathy he has for a lot of his clients that come in so that he can do the last act of love for the people that mean the most to them in this world. So it's a mixture, but I'm going to play you one that I swear, I'm really not a fraidy cat at all, but some of the things that he has described, I would be down the stairs and out the door, be damned, and somebody else can go and turn out the lights and lock up or whatever they're going to do because I'm out of there. I'm going to play one clip that I absolutely love, but I think you'll be wrapped up in it too. Here we go. Trigger warning. This clip contains mentions of death, mortuary procedures, and the supernatural that often resides in these businesses.
Point where I'm going to liken it to the story that I want to share with you today about a husband and wife who'd been married over 35 years. Now, the gentleman that came in to make arrangements for his wife, who had passed away, had told me that in the course of their 35 years of marriage, that there was a lot of times, quote unquote, that they didn't see eye to eye on a lot of different things. And that's with any marriage, right? That's true, right? So I didn't really think much about it, but he said that as we started talking about death, and because he said we're all going to die, so it was important for us to somehow or another decide what it is we wanted to do when the time came that either one of us passed away. And so the wife, she said, well, I would like to be viewed and then buried. Now,
Okay.
now one thing you need to understand too is with, have you ever heard of people taking things back from the deceased after a viewing?
Yes.
Like what?
I mean, like if someone has a pendant that they wear
Okay.
and they want to keep that or give it to a daughter or a loved one.
Becomes an heirloom, right?
Right, it becomes an heirloom.
Sure. And so this was no different from that. The lady actually had, I was given a bag of jewelry, and there were a number of rings, a bracelet, necklace. But one thing in particular that this gentleman wanted back from his wife was their wedding ring. It was her wedding ring. And I thought, well, okay, that's no problem. We can go ahead and do that. So when there's a viewing, and I guess if you had a trained eye and you knew exactly what you'd be looking for, you'd see it almost instantaneously. But there's some sort of an indication that would be on the inside of that casket, which would allow the funeral director, before closing the casket, remember to take off this, sometimes we tie strings around our fingers to remind us of certain things.
Right.
Well, in
Palm
this case,
Pilot.
there's Palm Pilot.
Note to self.
So anyway, this particular moment, there's usually something, either a highly colored pin that is placed on the interior there's an overlay that goes on the outside of the casket, so you can place something there that only the individuals that work the funeral would see and take note of. But in the funeral home that I was working with at the time, they had little velvet bags.
Okay.
And we would attach that to the back end of the head, or when the casket is open, that head panel, there's a head portion of the casket that actually opens up. So we would attach that velvet bag to the back side of that so no one would see it. But as we close the casket, we would see the bag.
You're obviously going to notice it.
Gosh, I got to get that jewelry. Now, going back to our original conversation, back in the arrangement office, he had said, we disagreed on one thing regarding her passing and where she was to be buried, and it was her jewelry. He said she wanted to be buried with her wedding ring, but I want the wedding ring back. And I said, okay. And I said, are you sure you don't want to just adhere to what her wishes were?
Right, her final wish.
Yeah, because there are a lot of times, and I'm just going to go off the tangent here for just a moment, because there are individuals that will come in and make funeral arrangements. They're called pre-needs. And families have the right to change those if they want to, but I always find that a little disrespectful. If a person takes the time to come in and make a funeral arrangement for themselves, why in the world would you change it?
And I mean, obviously, they're not joking around. Like, I'm talking about my death. This is what I want.
Exactly right. But they can go ahead and make the changes, and they'll change. They'll either get paid for the changes they make, or they'll have to pay more depending upon the changes that they decide to have happen. So anyway, we can talk about that another time. This particular moment, the funeral came, beautiful service. There were about probably 130 people there, and maybe 140, which is a big size funeral, by the way.
Yeah.
And so the time came for us to close the casket. And so and I was there, and my guy next to me was there. But we closed the casket. My guy started to move flowers, and I saw this velvet bag. And I go, oh, shoot, I got to pull that ring. I forgot all about the ring. So I grabbed the bag, pulled open the lid up once again, maneuvered the ring off of his wife's ring finger off the left hand, put it in the bag, and then handed it to... Well, no, actually, I put it in my shirt pocket. Closed the casket, then went to the cemetery, had the burial. After the burial, or the committal service was completed, I then took that bag out of my pocket. I handed it to the gentleman. I said, here's your wife's ring. He said, thank you. So he put it away. Didn't think much about it. Everything was fine.
Right.
They went on ahead and completed the burial. I went on ahead and left back to the mortuary, recorded the last little notes that I needed to record on the service itself, and then marked it as completed and done. So about 2 weeks later, we get a call. It goes through the reception board, or through the operator board, I get this click. Say, Frank, there's a guy on the phone, kind of agitated, wants to talk to you. So I get on the phone, introduce myself, and he says, hey, do you remember me? You handled the burial for my wife. And as we were talking, all of a sudden, yeah, in my mind, I could remember, I could see her, I could remember everything that was going on. And he said, hey, I didn't get the ring. I said, what do you mean you didn't get the ring? He said, I didn't get the ring.
A long story short, they had to disinter, I guess that's what you would call it. They had to dig up the grave, open the coffin, and lo and behold, the ring that Frank had given this gentleman was still on his wife's finger. So they took the ring off, they put it in the velvet bag, they gave it to the man. A week later, he said, there's no ring in this pouch. And he insisted that she be dug up one more time. And I know there's probably a more respectful way to say that, disinterred, I'm not sure. So they had to go through the state examiners, this and that, because it was a big deal to disturb a grave, and then they had to take the coffin to the mortuary to open it, because you're not allowed to do that at cemeteries. And they opened up the casket, and the ring was on her finger again. And then he didn't hear from the gentleman for about 6 months, and he thought, well, I guess he finally has the ring, because obviously the wife didn't want him to have it. They were known in our family as the Bickersons. They fought about everything, and they were fighting about this ring, and the husband was going to get his way. This is how it ends.
She just wants to rest in peace. But anyway, so the cemetery president again said, if that's what he wants to do and he's willing to pay for it,
Fine.
So they exhumed, and we took the casket, same routine, took the casket back to the mortuary, opened the casket, and what?
The ring was on her finger?
The ring was still on her finger.
Oh.
And I looked at him and I said, your wife is probably trying to tell you that she wants the ring.
Yeah, at this point.
Yeah, that is what she told you. She wanted to be buried with her ring.
She means it. She's going to keep taking that back. Oh my gosh.
And so anyway, he didn't make a huge jubilation decree that you were wrong or anything like that.
He probably went pale.
He just took the ring and left.
Oh my gosh.
And I looked at my boss and I said, what do you want to do? And he said, what do you mean, what do I want to do? I said, do we keep her out in case this happens
He's
again?
going to ask to exhume again.
So he said, no, we got to put her back to rest. So that was our agreement with him. Once we look in the casket, we take her back to the cemetery and bury her again. Okay, that's fine. So to this day, we all know where she was buried.
Right.
And then
the dirt is still fresh on top of her grave.
That's right. So here's the interesting fact. In putting it all together, first of all, the missing jewelry twice in a row.
Uh-huh.
Then he comes back, or we just thought everything was done and over with. And what happened about a month? It wasn't more. It was probably about 6 months after that we got a death call. Mm-hmm. And it was to go to the medical examiner's office and bring this individual that had passed away into our care. And so I didn't really think much about it, but as I went down to the medical examiner's office, they brought the individual out, and then I signed for him, and then they gave me a list of inventory as far as what was on possession of the individual on the body. And so I'm looking through the list, and I said, oh, he had a wedding ring. Cool. So I go ahead and sign it and hand it off to my friend. He goes, oh, he didn't just have the wedding ring. It was obstructing his intestinal flow. And so that's what eventually caused him to get a little abdominal pain and pressure, some gangrene, caused him to die.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm looking at the ring and I go, oh my gosh, it's the same ring that we had lost twice. Or that
This was the guy? This was the husband?
This was the husband. So I don't know if he physically swallowed the ring or if it was forced down his throat. We're going to let the coroners decide what happened.
Yeah.
But how in the world, why would you, if you're so interested in having the ring, why would you ingest it?
Yeah.
Why would you swallow it? So to this day, in my mind, I'm thinking this lady wanted so bad to keep the ring, and if he wanted to keep it and keep it away from her, that she was going to find some way to make sure that it was his death.
This is the end of you.
Well, I'll show you.
Yeah.
The only thing that was never mentioned is I wonder if the husband was buried with the wife's ring. I think it's probably a bad luck omen at this point. That is it for this show. I hope you had a good time. I know I enjoyed being with you, talking about something that really interested me, and I'm sure it interested many of you too. You all have a beautiful week, and we will be here next Tuesday. Remember, that's our new day, and I will be uploading at 3 in the morning. So if you are on your way to work early, or if you're just an early riser and want some company, we'll be there for you. Till next week. Love you.
One Good Thing Media is brought to you by our host and creator, Jeryl Spear. All things technical are by David Dodd, and our announcer is Robert Spear. Our theme song for Season 2 is Force by HGST.